Hey guys, welcome to our second Ignite session. We have 4 fantastic speakers lined up for you. For folks who weren't here when I give my little run through of the way the Ignite format works, the speakers have each submitted a deck of exactly 20 slides. They're set to auto advance every 15 seconds. That means that all the presentations will be exactly 5 minutes long. And I think that's pretty much it. We should get this party started.
Hi. You guys still aren't good at that. That's better. Hi, everyone. Cool, so Marissa lied. There's actually 3 great speakers, and I'm just here to entertain you. I want to talk about OCD. So who here knows what OCD is by raising your hand? Cool. So you're wrong. It's actually not OCD. It's called CDO because that's the letters are in alphabetical order like they should be. And that's super important. For someone who has OCD, alphabetical order is the only way that you sort things. What I really want to talk about is optimizing things, because that's another thing that I do. So I have OCD. I actually have a talk about OCD. One of the things that I started doing was organizing my shopping list in the order in which things appear in the store. And it's weird. Don't ask. So another thing I do is this wallet check. So my wallet is like sitting over there on my laptop. Matt's probably going to try to take it now. But I occasionally do this well-rounded check where I'll look for my wallet, and that's actually stopped me from getting pickpocketed on more than one occasion. Another thing that I do that's interesting or weird is I will check my iPhone alarm multiple times, because sometimes when you switch to AM, if you don't let the slider go the whole way to AM, it actually stays on PM, and then you wake up really late in the day. So this is just a pet peeve that slipped into my Ignite talk. If you pump your own gas, if you're in one of those states where you pump your own gas and you leave your car sitting at the pump while you go in and go grocery shopping, I don't like you. This is not my desk. If I had a desk, it would not look like this because no one leaves paper clips out and no one uses pencils anymore. But keeping your desk organized is incredibly important, especially when an alert goes off at 5 a.m. and you need to find something. I count things. We were actually talking about this earlier. It's weird, but I don't know why I do it, but I count things. I've counted the number of times I've walked back and forth around this weird pattern. And sometimes it's useful. One of the things that actually makes me really good at my job is my constant requirement that I reach inbox 0. This is a really old screenshot, but I never go to bed without having acknowledged all of my emails and archiving them or saving them for later. I often take it a step further. So I have a Mac because that's the only operating system you should ever use. And I always reach doc 0 too, which means no HipChat notifications, no mail notifications, no Twitter notifications, etc. And then I take it another step further because I put all of my code on GitHub. That's a really old picture. I put all of my code on GitHub, and I make sure that I'm at notification 0 at the end of the day too. So I don't subscribe to GitHub via email. I do everything in their notification center, and I make sure that I have no notifications when I go to bed at night. And this is where I start bitching about stuff. So if you're going to maintain software, and you're going to make that software publicly available, you have to put tests in your software. Because me, as an OCD person, cannot possibly contribute to your software without the risk of breaking it. And I'm not going to contribute to software if I'm going to break it. You also need to make lists. Lists are super important because they tell you when you're done. If you don't have a list, you don't know when you're done. OCD is an interesting thing because it helps you spot anomalies, which this drives me absolutely insane. But at the same time, it's super useful when I'm looking at 10,000 lines of log output and I need to figure out the one thing that caused a bug to occur. I'm from Pittsburgh, and it really makes me sad that Heinz is also from Pittsburgh and produces such interesting work. This is super important because this is a real life lesson. Yes, the slide is funny, but when we talk about our software and we talk about our lives, put things back the way you found them, or better yet, put things back in a better state than you found them. It's just a great life motto. There are no such things as double-quoted strings. You shouldn't use them unless you absolutely have to, and if you absolutely have to, you're probably doing it wrong. Single-quoted strings are superior. If you disagree with me, I'm sorry, but you couldn't be more wrong. In Ruby, there are no such thing as optional parameters. Syntactically, they're optional, but if you do this, no one will actually like you. And I know you all want to have friends, so you should not do this because friends are important. And then at the same time, this is like an example of a double slide where I cheat. You should totally use descriptive variable names because you're not the only person who's ever going to have to look at your code. So A, B, and C, and the term magic in general are obviously very descriptive. My name's Seth Vargo. That's my Twitter handle and a whole bunch of other places on the internet. I'm done.
I guess I'm next. So because we keep talking, we don't stop talking when doing an Ignite, because if we stop talking, then we might get nervous and we might wonder what people are actually thinking. We never want that. So I am Matt Stratton. I am the co-host of Arrested DevOps. I work at Chef, and I'm here to tell you how to hire your first DevOps, because we all want to do the DevOps, and you need to get the people to do the DevOps. I'm going to tell you all the secrets on getting ready to hire your first DevOps for your organization. So like you said, you want the DevOps. Who's going to bring it to you? Well, obviously, a DevOps. Clearly, I mean, this is just, table stakes here. If you want to do DevOps, you need someone called a DevOps to do that. And everyone wants to know, like, for example, I mean, I want to manage a database, right? So I need a DBA, right? I mean, that's what they do. The name describes what you do. Your position describes what you do. So if you want to do DevOps, you need a DevOps. And I'm going to tell you how to hire your very first one. And I'm going to give you the magic checklist, so make sure you write this down. Okay, we may post this, but you don't want to be behind in hiring your DevOps and missing out on the opportunity to bring all this DevOps goodness to your organization with that magic first hire that will transform you. First thing is make sure you include the word DevOps in the job post a minimum of 50 times. This is science. Science has shown that less than 50 times, you will not get anybody's attention. Right? 49 times not good enough, must be in there 50 times. For example, you're hiring just a regular developer. Call them a DevOps developer too, because otherwise they won't want to work for you, because only cool places do DevOps. And so therefore you must call it a DevOps developer. You could maybe hire a DevOps janitor, DevOps mailroom person. Experience is important. We're changing the world here, people. We've got no time for people that haven't done this a lot. And you don't know how to do it, so you need to hire somebody that knows. So make sure you hire somebody with plenty of experience doing DevOps and doing all sorts of revolutionary technologies like C and Java, because that's real important to DevOps. Also, if you're playing along on the DevOpsDays drinking game, this is a slide with Pete Cheslock. Take a shot. So in addition to having those experiences, the amount of experience, be specific. Okay? So if you use Ansible, it doesn't matter if they've done Chef, Puppet, SaltStack, or CF Engine. You only do Ansible, right? I don't care if you've done Jenkins. We use Go. So make sure you specifically only hire DevOps that has used the exact technologies that your organization currently does. But that being said, make sure they can do all of them. So it's not good enough just to have done configuration management. You better know continuous integration. You better know continuous delivery. You better know how to write tests, and you better have been doing it for over 10 years. So that means you need to hire somebody who has a time machine. These people are out there. You just have to know how to find them before anybody else does. So what kind of DevOps do you want? There's lots of kinds, but there's really only one kind that you want, and it's the one that's going to help you revolutionize your organization. And that is a DevOps who is really good at doing two things, and those two things are being really good at patching and backups, because that's all a DevOps does. So make sure that you get someone who knows how to do those things, because if you can't, you're not doing the DevOps. So every DevOps engineer, so it's just a shame that nobody's hiring sysadmins anymore. They're all DevOps engineers, and they do patching and DevOps. And they better know Ruby. They better love Ruby. So this is how you can self-select people away, because you're not doing DevOps if you're not doing Ruby. So make sure that your DevOps is good at patching, is good at doing backups, and is good at using Ruby to do those things. But to be fair, you're bringing someone in to change your organization. Involve your existing teams. You're doing this to make their life better and make sure that they know and they're a part of the process. For example, your development team. It's great news for them, because you know what? All the bullshit they hate doing, they don't have to do anymore, because they're getting a DevOps, right? So rejoice, developers. You don't have to deploy code. You don't have to write scripts. You don't have to care about anything, because DevOps is there to protect your most valuable team and time. And the ops team gets relieved too, because you know what? They don't have to learn new stuff anymore. They can just keep doing all the old stuff they used to do because we know they're just too dumb to learn anything new. Because we're going to bring in the smart new DevOps who is going to teach everybody. And this is the best part. You get to save money and fire your QA department. Because I can tell you, if you hire the right DevOps, you will have 0 defects and you won't even have to test for them. So everybody wins. Developers don't have to do bullshit. Ops people don't have to learn. QA people don't get paid. But here's the deal, right? We say this all the time. No company's a special snowflake. We know this. Everybody has similar problems. Your company's not special. Every company's the same. And companies aren't snowflakes, but people are. People are special. People aren't a checklist. So the way you're going to be successful with DevOps, and you might have to hire to help you, but find the snowflake that matches to what's going to help your organization. Not me, I guess, because I'm done. Thank you. Here's Dave.
Hi, next. Oh, next died a zillion years ago. Hi, I'm Dave Stagner from Congruence. I'm going to do the 7 habits of highly effective DevOps. Those of you who know me are going to be shocked that this isn't funny at all. Those guys were awesome. I'm going to be boring. This was inspired, by Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I read once like 15 years ago, and it really stuck with me. So I wanted to talk about it because I think it really is very applicable to DevOps. And we'll see why as, gosh, what does this have to do with DevOps? Well, DevOps starts on the inside with the individual before it hits the team. And this is what Covey talked about. He talked about starting as an independent and going to interdependent. He also talked about this, which I should get to quick, production and production capability. This is very important for DevOps. Production is how much stuff you do. Production capability is how much you can do. You can burn capability to get more production. And on to the next one. Habit 1, be proactive. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit 3, put first things first. These are about yourself. These are not about the organization. And then on to interdependence. These are about the organization. Habit 4, think win-win. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then be understood. Habit 6, synergize. And finally, the 7th habit, for continuous improvement, sharpen the saw, whatever that means. If you're sharpening, you're not actually working. The saw is actually for cutting things. I've never quite understood his terminology here. But and this, I wanted to emphasize DevOps as a human process because I thought all we would ever talk about here is Chef and Ruby, and everybody's being awesome and talking about the human side of it, so now I feel completely redundant. So now to the details. Independence, again, DevOps starts with the individual. If you don't do good individual process, you're not going to be good at team process. Independence. Habit 1, be proactive. Now, Covey talks about your circle of concern, which is the stuff you care about, and your circle of influence, which is what you can actually do anything about. And you should try to expand your circle of influence to be your circle of concern. And then begin with the end in mind. Imagination and conscience both come into play here. Imagination is how you come up with a great end. Conscience is how you not be evil doing so. That's kind of important. Habit 3, this is way too much to talk about. The idea is to shove all of your stuff up into the planning phase where it's important but not urgent. You don't want crisis, you don't want interruptions, and you definitely don't want distractions. Because that's just dumb. That's Facebook. Interdependence. Now we will talk about other people and how you deal with other people and how you're a part of a team. Blink. Habit 4, think win-win. Now this is about integrity, maturity, and an abundance mentality. You don't want to think win-lose and try to make other people lose so you win. You don't want it to be lose-win, which is a mistake a lot of people make. Empathic listening, which is how you listen to other people. You need to understand what they care about. And we've talked about that a lot this week, and it's very important. Man, my timing sucks. And habit 6, synergize. And this is my phrasing, not his, but the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. A great team is better than any of the individuals in the team can be on their own. So build great teams with synergy. Continuous improvement. This is the whole point of it. This is what the other habits build to. How do you get better, not just adequate? Sharpen the saw. And now we talk about an upward spiral where he gets into the real details. You learn, you commit, and you do. Figure out what it is you need to do and how you can do it. Decide that you are actually going to do that, which is a very important step because a lot of times you know what needs done, but you don't do it. And we're techies. It's easy to talk about the technology. It's a lot harder to talk about our role as people. So, last words of wisdom from Stephen Covey. Manage from the left. Manage from your rigid, thoughtful brain. Lead from the right. Lead from your creative side. And I think that's it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason Walker. My slides haven't started yet. I put it together a quick Ignite in regards to community responsibility, open source experimentation, and you. And I've got about 20 years experience or so in IT and through the peaks and troughs of various things. Open source continues to come up every so often about ways to be able to make things go faster in respect to a community. And I think one of the big things is that there's many different paradigms when it comes down to the community. There's the community of the team that you work with in a very localized way. There's also those communities out there that support open source software and involved with the writing, the testing, et cetera. A focus on this is around the we and not the they. So when it comes down to bringing things in, I think Harplead was a pretty telling story to the way that you need to actually start to manage some of those open source projects internally if you're actually the one that's bringing something into a company. And be sure that you're driven by the right things. So Admiral Hopper here, I know there's the quote of the worst saying in the world, or the worst quote in the world, but I think getting permission, or asking for forgiveness as opposed to permission is a key thing here. Because usually if there's an idea around bringing in an open source project to satisfy some sort of need, there's some sort of constraint. Being mindful of that constraint and understanding what the objectives are to break it down is very important. A little too fast. You have to be careful that when it comes down to open source projects or anything that's out on the internet, there are bad things out there. Maybe not necessarily nefarious, but certainly things that don't align with the principles that you want. It might be too aggressive at patching, different types of features that they're looking to build in, et cetera. And open source is certainly a way to be able to start to shift away from different things where you may have vendor packages that are very much pay as you go. And open source is a way to be able to move away from that. But with open source in place, you have to start to think about some new questions. And some of those new questions isn't necessarily about who's going to own or support this thing, especially if that's a paradigm that doesn't work necessarily with what it is the problem that you're trying to solve, and start to show what is this open source option that can start to add value. What can it start to address in that context? And be careful, because open source isn't free. Rosalita said it best here, that being in a crazy house. There's nested costs when it comes down to open source, and it could be migration, it could be the types of costs that are associated with being able to keep things up to date, such as you may move from vendor lock-in to software lock-in and not able to do things like patch things or keep things up to date with an open source project in the way that they're publishing things. So be careful of the booty trap. Also, keep in mind small incentives. If there's a particular thing that you're trying to solve with that open source project, it doesn't mean you're going to try to completely replace something that's already there. It may be just that small widget, that small feature. Be very specific with the goal that you're after, and don't let scope creep come into play. And be aware of the $50 bill, because when that starts to happen, where you have too many objectives that you are no longer focused on the thing that you're trying to solve, you may end up with an effort that really wasn't able to solve what you were looking for in the first place. And so that leads into experimentation. So as you go through and you have these objectives, it's going to be very critical that you go through and figure out some of the specifics of what it is that you're looking to achieve. With that in mind, wait for it. You have to be mindful of the past. And this is something, Patrick, as part of your presentation, it really just, it beaconed to me here. And that is a matter of making sure that you pull from what the experience that you have in regards to either past attempts to bring something in that failed, or if there's just known issues and constraints that you're able to adapt against. And that's a key thing here, is to be able to take what it is that you're learning and adapt that to being able to make something better. And also then trust in the learning. So as you go through and you've identified specific data that you can use to justify your approach, to justify the outcomes, trust in that. Not all of those experiments are going to actually be workable. They're not going to be things that the outcome is necessarily justifying the expense or the transition to the open source project. And sometimes those experiments are going to show you need to not bring that in. That should be something that is considered a completely reasonable outcome of the goal, or of the effort to bring in the open source project. And of course, then there's you. When you're looking at the different community, the community either locally or with the community of that open source project, it's very important to be respectful, mindful, empathetic to everyone that's involved. Usually the people that are supporting or maintaining those open source projects are not doing that as their primary job. So when you're finding your fellow Goonies, be sure to not be a dick, because that's a very important thing here in regards to bringing this in, not only locally, but out there in the world. And with that, I think it's a thank you. Oh, so you may not get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. And I'll leave it there.
All right, one more round of applause for all of our fantastic speakers.